What's happening, guys? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And today I want to talk about everyone's favorite Metroid topic, the Metroid Prime Trilogy. And I want to talk about whether or not Nintendo actually needs to give us the Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Nintendo Switch in some way, shape, or form, or the Metroid Prime 1 remake, these two rumors and theories that everyone's been talking about for a couple of years. Everyone has expected it. I have expected it for a long time as well, and I honestly do still expect it, as silly as it may seem. But beyond whether or not we expect it, I want to talk about how important it really may or may not be for Nintendo to even release these games on the Switch in preparation for Metroid Prime 4. At this point, I feel like a lot of us are almost starting to become a little bit numb to the idea of the Prime Trilogy or Prime Remake or what have you on the Nintendo Switch, because it's literally been since the first year of the Switch in 2017 that conversations and theories about the Prime Trilogy coming to the Switch have been going around. And then the following year, by 2018, there were apparently pretty substantial reports and rumors behind the scenes that said it was a plan by Nintendo. At this point, Metroid Prime 4 had already been revealed at E3 in 2017, so by the time we come to the following year in 2018, and especially building up to the Game Awards in December of 2018, there was so much buzz about the fact that Metroid Prime 4 was probably close to being shown, and the Prime Trilogy was probably going to come to the Switch so that it could kind of reintroduce fans to the Prime series of games in order to kind of build up hype and interest in Metroid Prime 4. And now we all know the sad tale of what actually happened here, because only a month later, in January of 2019, we found out that Metroid Prime 4 was delayed and given to Retro Studios, and they started that game from the ground up again. And so it can almost be hard to remember that only a couple of months before that announcement, we all expected Metroid Prime 4 to be shown to us right around the corner at any given time, which is why that December 2018 Game Awards season was really important, because there was a lot of buzz about Metroid and Prime 4 and the Prime Trilogy at that time. And so at this point, with the delay and the restarting, the rebooting of Metroid Prime 4, and the lack of any information on Prime 4 or a Metroid Prime Trilogy in the 4 years since, it has us all wondering, why have we not seen these Metroid Prime Trilogy games released on the Switch? Were these rumors and leaks that people have been talking about actually true? Plenty of reports and people in the industry who have claimed to be in the know have said that they've heard that Nintendo's been sitting on completed ports of the Prime Trilogy for years now, and that they're just waiting for the ideal time to reveal and to release these games on the Switch. We don't know what form they're taking. We don't know if they're digital, if they're physical, if they're individual releases, if they're a packaged trilogy, how much work has been done to clean up the graphics or to update the controls or even the content and whatnot. All of that stuff is a mystery, but these people have been saying for a while that it should be real behind the scenes. In fact, most of us probably know that just last year, months ago, Jeff Grubb himself said that he heard the Prime Trilogy games were coming before the end of 2022, and he believed his leaks so much that he said he would shave his head if they didn't release. And well, I think we all know how that ended. Again, I'm not throwing shade towards Jeff Grubb himself. I don't know him personally. We obviously travel in the same circles, but him and I have never talked or interacted. And he seems like a totally nice, great guy. I have no issues with him, but I do think that what he went through with the Prime Trilogy and the Zelda remasters as well, and promising that his behind-the-scenes leaks were so accurate that he was willing to shave his head, and then the fact that he had to do it because he was wrong, it's just a great lesson, I think, for a lot of people to have learned about how to treat things that are claimed to be leaks and rumors. And maybe he did hear something real that just ended up not being true. Maybe he never heard it and he was not being truthful. I don't want to believe that, because he seems like a truthful guy. I think that he genuinely believed what he said. But it goes back to, it kind of teaches us a lesson and how to treat these things. And so now when we come back to the Metroid Prime Trilogy and the fact that regardless of leaks and rumors and speculation that we've all been doing for years, and hey, I've been talking about the Prime Trilogy for basically 6 years almost at this point, right? I myself have been discussing it. I've never said it's a leak or a rumor from my lens, I've never shared anything I've heard. I've only just discussed the news stories that have been out there, and I've also made my own random theories and speculation as a fan, right? But regardless, at this point, after all this time, we still don't have these games released on the Switch. Now the discussions about a next-gen Nintendo console are happening in force, and many of us believe we could see it or play it this year or even sometime next year. It feels like before the end of 2024, it's just going to be a real thing. Yes, I thought we're going to see it this year, but regardless of that, it's something that we're all thinking about. And so if there's truth to the next-gen device being around the corner, 2023 or 24, what does that mean for the release of the Prime Trilogy, especially as it relates to Prime 4's release? And I'm gonna bring this back to kind of how I phrased the beginning of this video. Does Nintendo even really need to release these games specifically to hype the world up for Metroid Prime 4? And it may shock you guys to hear this, because obviously I want these games re-released on the Nintendo Switch, and I want people to get re-hyped for Metroid Prime 4 by experiencing these games again. But honestly, I don't truly think Nintendo needs to release these games. Again, I know it's a hot take and most of you guys won't agree with this, and you might even be surprised to hear me, of all people, say this, a huge Metroid fan who's almost garnered probably half of his following based on the fact that I'm a Metroid fan who makes a ton of Metroid content. But the reason I think that is because I'm putting a lot of faith in Metroid Prime 4 itself to deliver the goods so strongly that people aren't going to feel like they need to replay and rebuy these Metroid Prime games just to get excited for Metroid Prime 4. I'm really wanting to believe, and I'm putting a lot of faith in the product to do so, I really want to believe that Prime 4 is going to shine all on its own. And that in a perfect world, yes, it would be easy for people to play the Prime Trilogy on the Switch beforehand, but if Nintendo doesn't do that for whatever reason, I still think that Metroid Prime 4 will and should be strong enough to stand on its own without the need for those games. Look, let's be real about the Metroid Prime trilogy of games. Again, my favorite trilogy of games, Metroid Prime the First, my all-time favorite video game ever created. Let's be real about those games. Those games don't really rely very heavily on a narrative. They're not relying on dialogue, they're not relying on cutscenes, and they're not relying on a beat-to-beat story that has to be followed in a specifically straight line. Those games, and really the Metroid story as a whole, but more specifically the Prime trilogy of games, they rely much, much more on lore and on history told to Samus throughout things that she reads, throughout the worlds that she travels in those three games. And so you can kind of put together the pieces of what maybe happened in order with the Space Pirates and Phazon and infusing Metroids and doing these tests and experiments and creating the Metroid Prime entity, which itself becomes Dark Samus. And that stuff is there for us to piece together, but really and truly those games don't require minute-to-minute, beat-to-beat knowledge of a sequence of events to enjoy. Again, it is ideal to play those games or to know those games before going into Metroid Prime 4, but I don't think it's absolutely mandatory. Nintendo should do it because A, the fans want it, and B, they're going to make a freaking killing in terms of money if they do it. So there's the business sense and there's the fan service reasons to do it. But in a world where for whatever dumb, kooky reason, Nintendo just doesn't ever re-release these games on the Switch or on the next-gen thing before Metroid Prime 4 comes out, I do think that narratively, Metroid Prime 4 should be able to stand up on its own and be able to fill in the gaps to the player in whatever way they decide to do it to tell us why Metroid Prime 4 is happening as a story. And then the game itself just needs to be beautiful and fun and make Samus look like a badass and be a great showcase for the next-gen hardware and be its own kick-ass first-person shooter adventure that also happens to star Samus. And we shouldn't have to play the Prime Trilogy games to get other people excited for Metroid Prime 4. That's my personal philosophy and my personal thought as a super huge diehard Metroid fan. I really hope that how I'm explaining this makes sense to you guys, because I know obviously a lot of diehard Metroid fans also come to my channel and watch my content and watch my Metroid videos, right? So I'm hoping that we can meet on the same level on this idea, because I would imagine that a lot of people's default reaction is, that's crazy. They have to release the Prime trilogy of games because people have to play and know those games to get excited for Metroid Prime 4. And I understand that. In fact, I think I've been thinking the same thing for a few years now. But, you know, over the last year and the last few months, probably, I kind of have started to realize, as it becomes more clear that we're probably coming into the end of the Switch era and the beginning of the new era is sometime happening in the next 12 to 18 months, and we still don't know anything about Metroid Prime 4, I started to realize, you know, when we really look at those 3 games, it's not imperative for new players to play those games to be excited for Metroid Prime 4. Now, Nintendo's marketing needs to be smart, and they need to make it very clear to folks, the same way they did with Metroid Dread, by the way, and look how that turned out. Best-selling Metroid game of all time. And it was reviewed very well. So, if Nintendo is smart with their marketing and their hype and tree houses and things they do for Prime 4 at the time that we finally see this game, they can tell the world that Prime 4 is a sequel to Metroid Prime 3, but you don't have to play those games beforehand. We're going to give you a recap. The narrative is told to Samus and the player in such a way that it's not going to feel mandatory. New players can pick up and start their Metroid Prime journey with Metroid Prime 4, right? That's the messaging I would like to see Nintendo give us when Prime 4 is finally revealed and the world is getting excited for it again. But I will end this conversation to say, let's rein it back a little bit, and I want to remind you, all I'm saying is that I don't think Nintendo needs to release the Prime Trilogy, re-release the Prime Trilogy before Metroid Prime 4 comes out. However, I will again remind you, A, I still want them to do it, and B, it's probably the best thing for them to do. Again, it's good. It's something the fans want. It's going to help the hype for Metroid Prime 4, and it's going to make them a ton of money. So there are reasons for them to do it, and again, I want them to do it. I'm just saying, unlike a lot of people, I don't think it would be the death knell for Metroid Prime 4 if Nintendo doesn't re-release these games on the Switch. Again, it would be stupid for them not to, and I'm not predicting that they won't. I'm just saying we need to start preparing ourselves as everything around Metroid Prime 4 and the Prime Trilogy continues to be a mystery every day and every week and every month and every year. We need to prepare ourselves for the possible reality where those games don't come to the Switch. And if that does happen, I'm hoping this video and conversation helps you guys feel comfortable realizing, you know, maybe Rob's got a point. Maybe the Prime Trilogy doesn't have to be re-released and have to be played for new players and fans alike to get hyped for Metroid Prime 4. Personally, I think that's the case.